You know, one of the things that I've been asked, thanks. I've been asked is because I voted different on the only piece of business that we have voted on thus far. And I said, you know, with me, as people that know me in the city know, there will be differences of opinion. I will not agree with everything that is stipulated. I don't think it's important that we disagree. I think it's important how we disagree. I think that we must fashion a way to work together. Now, I've been asked what can we do by a whole host of people on both sides of this town. People have known me for years and people who've not, and have said, what will you do different? I think one of the things we will try to do, and I'm saying try because it's going to be hard for all of us, is we'll try to come to this public not with civility, but with a sense of we represent more than our own respective egos, our own respective ways of doing things. I'm an independent businessman. Rick Sullivan is an independent businessman. Rick is the CEO of his company. My company is much smaller, but I'm the CEO there too. So I'm used to making decisions, just as he is. We'll have to learn how to deal with one another so that the decisions made are mutual. They involve both the two of us as well as Melanie, who is an administrator in her own right. So that's going to be, I think that's one of the hardest things we're going to have to do. The second is to continue dialogue when you're dealing with publics who come thinking they know you and thinking they know what you represent and they do not. You know, I was asked, well, you belong to the round. I don't just belong to the St. Louis Black Leadership Roundtable. I'm the past president of the St. Louis Black Leadership Roundtable. Proud to say it. The Roundtable's position on issues here is a vote that is taken by a majority. There are issues that we have addressed as an organization that I have been adamantly opposed to. That is one of the reasons I have run. One person said, were you voted onto this thing because you are a member? I said, no. I was voted in spite of being a member of the Roundtable. So I understand some of the sentiment against that organization. Percy Green was also a member of that organization, or still is, as far as I understand. It was an organization that was basically formed for African Americans to have a forum of things that affect African Americans in this city primarily. And I'm proud to be a member of that organization and not always to accept everything that the organization does.
So the appointed board and the elected board, they're going to work in conjunction with each other.
I will do everything I can consistent with the law to work with the existing school board. To me, it is asinine for us to assume that we would come into this situation and not want to work with the people who were elected to this office. I think it's important to understand that in 1983, I was not on anybody's slate. I raised my own money, all documented, ran on my own, and became a member of the St. Louis Board of Education. I understand the importance of the election. I was one of those who had real questions about the entire structure that's been put in place now, but I understand why it was put in place. I worked on committees that helped to draft the legislation that led to this. None of us thought it would happen in this manner, but there were serious other concerns. There were other attempts. One of the approaches that was evidenced when we first began discussions of what happens if this school system continues to non-perform the way it has, and I will be prejudiced enough to say the last 6 years, because about 4 years ago, this system was within 2 points of being accredited.
Okay, now see, you
and it's gone.
That he was
But she didn't let me. She didn't let me finish because she tried to paint me with the same brush of people that come from an organization that I am a part of, and I refuse to be painted that way.
I understand.
I thought I could not justify nor understand how the district could go from 2 points to a loss of 23 points.
All right, and that
was run like a business.
If it's run like a business,
it was run like a business by Rabati, who had no concern about the educational aspects of the business. He didn't know how to run this kind of business.
Right.
And that's sort of
the school system like a business. It's not a business.
Yeah.
We're dealing with children. We're dealing with our future, and we cannot run them like they are commodities.
They're not widgets, and I understand that. There are principles, however, that relate to business that have to be dealt with. You have to balance budgets.
Oh yeah, I mean, I
You
understand
have to
that.
figure out ways to do
I
that.
understand that.
The budget is balanced by the elected board. And
I
you
don't.
guys passed, you guys voted to hire an attorney on Friday who is going to cost more than twice as what the attorney that the elected board hired. You're going to have to cut something to pay for that attorney, and the only thing that you can possibly cut is from the classroom. You realize that? Have you studied the budget yet? Have you been briefed on it?
Not to the degree that you obviously have.
I have been to every public meeting that they held this spring on the budget, so I am somewhat familiar with it.
I hope you are correct when you say the budget is balanced. That is not what I understand. But if you say it's balanced, I will take your word on it as we speak right now. But let me remind you of one other thing. I did not vote to hire this law firm.
I know.
I did not vote to hire this law
You were the one person who had
firm.
the integrity not to, and I'd like to thank you for that. Enos Moss, all of the budget presentations explain that the revenues and expenditures are balanced, and that's what has to be balanced by state law. I know perfectly well that we have a deficit. I know all about the negative fund balance, and we got it.
But I don't.
Well, it's because Vince Shamel and Ron Jackson and Darnetta Clingsdale and Bob Archibald borrowed $36.5 million in 2003 rather than cut the budget enough to balance it.
I tell you, in that same Black Leadership Roundtable, we debated these issues quite a bit. I understand why it had to be borrowed. I understand how, Mr. Roberti came into this town saying that there was a $90 million deficit. If you deal with accrual accounting, which is the kind of accounting you use in private industry, it may have been a $90 million deficit. Superintendent Cleveland Hammond said the deficit was approximately 64 to 65 million. As it is worked out, it was closer to Dr. Hammond's structure than it was to Mr. Roberti's.
I know that.
But let me suggest something to you. Whether it's 90 or it's 60, is there a lot of hurt that's going to happen?
And you know why
Either
that
way,
money happened? Because Bob Holden withheld funds, and because the state unilaterally withheld funds that we were expecting to be paid in accordance with the desegregation agreement.
Ma'am, let me say to you again, I helped to negotiate that agreement.
Yes, I know.
I went to Bob Holden. I went to the Attorney General as a member of the Black Leadership Roundtable to say what you are doing is unconscionable. The desegregation agreement said you must fully fund the foundation formula, and then you must get additional monies for the buyout period for the St. Louis Public Schools, for the phase-out period. The state refused to do that. I've worked with the existing school board to try and get that. One of the things that has not been told to people in this state, this is not the only school district that has been hit, has been rocked as hard as it's been rocked with a reduction of funding to education. There was a suit initiated by primarily outstate school districts that started 4 years ago, and it's still going through.
254 school districts.
And there's a reason, because what happened to the foundation formula affected every school district in the state. Now, if you got a one-room schoolhouse and you got 3 teachers, and you eliminate a budget, or you decrease that by 1/3, you just lost 1/3 of your teaching factor. But the press does not read that because it's one person. Across this state, the substantial number of school districts are way, way smaller than this one. So even if they got a 20% reduction in their funding, it hurt them just as much, but it was not as readable. We went to now Bob Holden, who I know personally. Bob Holden was a Democratic governor, and he allowed this to happen. He didn't fight it. We appealed to him.
You're not telling me anything I don't know.
But I think you need to understand you're not telling me something that I haven't worked on.
I understand that you've worked on it. What bothers me is that everybody is blaming this district for a deficit situation that was caused by the irresponsibility of our state. And it is our state that has now taken over the school district and put you in a position to make decisions about our kids' education without our having the ability to vote you in or vote you out. And it's the state that's responsible for this situation. I'm far more better educated about the situation than most people are. And it is very upsetting to me that the state has taken control when the state has caused the problem.
You know, you may discern from this conversation to this point that if I believe something, I say that.
Yes.
Whether it's you or anybody else, I absolutely agree with you. I haven't argued the points that you've made. I believe everything that you said. So we don't have an argument about that. We really don't.
I realize that.
Yeah.
The only thing we have an argument about is that I didn't elect you and I can't throw you out of office if you don't do a good job. And that is very frightening to me because 4 years ago we had the same sort of setup with our school board through an election and it didn't work out. And people realized that having a district run by a business model did not work. And so through the electoral process, we made the appropriate changes and we put people in charge of the school district who we felt would correct the problems. And now the state, which is responsible for the problems, has come back and told us, no, you have to be run by a business model again. And as a citizen and as a taxpayer and as a parent of a child in this school district, I am extremely upset about what has gone on. And because I know that you've been a part of this and you've fought for the children, it disturbs me very much that you've allowed yourself to be used and put in the situation that you've allowed yourself to be put in. Rick Sullivan has been at the school district giving orders. You haven't been there and Ms. Adams hasn't been there. You haven't voted on some of the orders that he's given. The only thing you voted on was hiring that attorney the other day. It looks to me like you and Ms. Adams are here as window dressing and that he's the power. And that there's not much you're going to be able to do about that. And we're stuck with it.
You ever watch, no, I'm not stuck. Do you ever watch the Onion Harden show? It's a show, yeah, this is not the radio show, it's a TV show that they take. They do it, it comes on City Channel 2021, where this issue was raised about what do you do. I believe that what I'm doing is right. You don't believe it's right. And I'm not going to argue that because that's a sense of belief. And I'm not going to change your belief. And trust me, you're not going to change mine. What will change mine is if I think we cannot make this work. If I think what is happening, would you allow me to speak? Because I think I respected you that way. If I ever get the sense that Sullivan, Miss Adams, or anyone else prevent me in any manner from exercising my options on this board, there are very few options that I have at that point. But one of them is to quit. You see, I get a very small salary for doing this, and I don't mind giving that salary up. So I do have options. And if I feel that someone is running this unilaterally, whoever it is, or whoever they are, I still have the option to resign.